Hi, everybody. This is Jan Romano coming to you from Mass Hire Metro North Career Center. We're going to talk a little bit about Excel today, how to create a budget. So we're going to learn some basics of Excel. It's a good review, and if it's new to you, this will be great for you as well. So I will show you what we're going to be covering today. I'm going to take off my webcam. I'll come back in a little bit and show you my screen. So we're going to be talking about, as I mentioned, creating a budget. And what will that entail today? That will entail us creating and learning Excel screen elements, using the ribbon, doing some data entry, formatting numbers and labels, formulas. So we're going to be learning some basic formulas, some built-in formulas. We're going to be working with the ribbon. We're going to learn what cells are in a worksheet and what a workbook is. We're going to be creating labels and values and dates in order to enter in what type of information we want into the spreadsheet. So we'll be doing income and expenses and figuring out if there's any money left over for savings. And we'll be doing that as well as formatting the spreadsheet. So we'll be widening the columns. We'll be learning how to merge and center the titles. We'll be formatting the numbers so that they look good. We'll be formatting labels, and we'll be putting some borders in. Eventually, we'll be doing built-in formulas, using the auto sum and creating formulas, and that will be in part 2. So this is part 1 of creating a budget, and we're ready to start. So what I'm going to do is I have Excel opened already, and I'm going to start right here in a blank workbook. And when I get into this blank workbook, I'll make my screen a little bit larger so you can see it. And notice there are columns across the top here, and they are labeled with the alphabet. And there are over 16,000 columns in Excel, and they are labeled A to Z, and then the alphabet repeats itself and continues to repeat, and it goes across to the right. There are rows that you can see down on the side, and there's 1,048,000 plus rows in Excel. And if you look at the very bottom down here where I'm pointing, we are in sheet 1, and you can have several sheets just by hitting this plus sign and adding more sheets into the workbook. So the whole file is called a workbook, and we're working on one sheet. What we want to do is learn some of the elements of the screen. And one of the elements is, of course, is up here at the top, and this is called the ribbon. Now, the ribbon is something that I would advise that you start using, practicing, memorizing what tabs are across the top first. So in the green, you'll see File and Home, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, View, Help, and there are a few more add-ins that we could add in as well here. But these are the basics, and you want to remember what these tabs are. You also want to know that in each tab, there are groups. So there's a font group, an alignment group, a number group, styles, cells, editing. And so in each group, there are commands. And so you want to remember where these commands are and what group they're in and what tab they're on. And it really only takes a little bit of time of practicing for you to remember where these buttons are, but practice, I think, is the key. So what we'll do is we will start off with this spreadsheet. I am in what we call a cell. So each box under a column is called a cell. And right now these cells are about 8.4, maybe I know we don't usually round up, but we'll round up to about 9 spaces wide. But each column can be widened out to 255 characters wide, and I'll show you when we need to do that. So the first thing we would do is click in a cell and we would start to type. So I'm going to type in my home budget, and I'm going to make a mistake there on purpose, and I'll show you how to fix that in a little bit. I'm going to hit enter. Every time you hit enter, this green box, which I'm going to call the mouse, or sometimes I call it the cursor, will move down to the cell below, and then it allows me to type. So I'm going to type in the date, and I'm going to say that it's going to be January 1st, 2020 that I want to do this budget. And I'll keep going, typing in all of my labels for that column. So income, something that I want to put into my budget. I'll enter a couple of times, type in expenses. I'll put in a few expenses. Maybe I won't remember every expense that I need right now, but I'll show you later how to add in some more. I'll do rent, heat, electricity, phone, and miscellaneous. I'll put total in, and then I'll think to myself, well, I always want to know if I have any money left over for savings, so I'll type savings into A14. So I've typed in all of my labels, and I want you to notice that some of these labels, especially A1 and A11, are bouncing into the next column, which is column B. And some people would skip this column, but I would never advise to skip a column. What I would advise next is to widen the column. And how do you widen a column? Well, I want you to notice first, in each one of these A, B, C, D, each one of these columns, there's a line that separates the column. So I'm going to bring my mouse up to this line that separates these two columns. And what specifically I'm looking for is this double arrow right here. And when I get that double arrow, I know that I'm on that line. And what can I do? I can either drag it to widen, but my favorite thing is to double click. And when I double click, it takes and looks at the whole entire column, all 1,048,000 plus rows, and looks at the longest label and makes it as wide as the longest label. So my home budget was the longest label. So it's looking pretty good so far, but there's a few things that I might want to change a little bit later. So, but I'm going to keep on going so that I can show you how to fill this in, and then we'll make it look good after. So now I'm going to go to cell B4. So I typed in some labels. So all that text was considered labels, and now I'm ready to type in my values. The one thing about Excel is you always type in your values plainly. You don't type a $sign, you don't type a comma, you do type a decimal point and any decimal places. So let's say, for example, I'm going to put in 3,200.50. And then I hit enter, and I do want you to notice that the 50 cents, the zero, has been dropped off. Well, one thing I want you to understand is the default. So I'm on the home tab looking, I'm looking over here in the number group, I'm looking at the word general right here. General format is a plain format, but don't worry, we won't keep it plain for very long. So let's go down and let's go to cell B7. So when you're doing this on your own, you'll come down to B7 and you'll type in all the numbers for all the expenses. So let's say I put 1,800 for the rent, 200 for the heat, 200 for the electricity, 100 for the phone, and maybe I put 5. Don't forget to hit enter, and then I'll put 500 for miscellaneous. So I want you to know, look at these numbers and now know how to make them look like money. And so we call that formatting. Sometimes I'll call it dressing up the numbers. So what I'll do is I'll move my mouse around, and I want you to notice this white plus sign. This is the symbol that I'm going to get when I'm able to move over a cell and drag straight down, and that will highlight the cells that you would like to format. I do want you to notice that Excel always keeps the first cell white. So notice that 3,200 is not gray like the rest of the cells, but this cell is white. It's trying to show you what direction you started highlighting in. So now I'm going to come up to my home tab. I'm going to go over to the number group. I'm going to find this $sign button and click on the $sign button and notice my numbers. Now they all have 2 decimal places, they all have a comma where needed, and a $sign. And so that's what this $sign, which means an accounting format, you can see that above it. Please notice that you're going to get some shortcuts popping up every once in a while. I'm going to ignore those, but the $sign allows me to format my numbers. So now I'm ready to make this even look a little bit better. And one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my home budget. The first thing I'm going to do, because it's going to annoy me if I don't capitalize that M in my, that again won't look very good. So I'm going to come up. There are 2 ways to do this. One of the ways is to come up here into what we call the formula bar. Why is it called the formula bar? You'll see in part 2 when I do my formulas with you. But really what the formula bar is to show you what the truth is in the cell. Over here on the left-hand side, this is called the name box. So A1, in cell A1, it has all of the text, my home budget. So I'm going to come over here, backspace the M, and put a capital M in. Now, when the cursor is flashing, it means that I have to hit enter to lock this in. So I'm going to hit enter to lock it in. And that brings me to the next thing that I want to do. I want you to take a look and notice that 1Jan-20 is the format that Excel has changed this date into. But if you look in the formula bar, I had originally maybe typed in January 1, 2020, and it changed it to 1/1/20, and then I can change the look of the date. So I don't like the look of this date, let's say in cell A2, so where am I going to go? I'm going to go up to the Home tab. I'm going to come over to the number group. I know that sounds a little odd that I would come to the number group, but I want you to notice when I click this down arrow, which is going to say custom, I'm going to come down to the bottom choice. Now I could have chosen long date or short date, which I had, but I'm going to choose more number formats. Why? Because I'm going to tell Excel that I want to take the date and choose from these styles here. And one of the styles that I prefer is March 14th, 2012 is the sample that it gives me, but that's the style that I'm going to use, and I click OK, and it takes my date and it makes it look like that. Well, I still want you to notice, that's great, but I want you to notice that my home budget and January 1st, 2020 are in cell A1, and they could look better over the spreadsheet. They could be centered over the spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this white plus sign again, get on top of cell A1, and highlight across to B1. I'm going to show Excel these two cells, and then I'm going to come back up to the Home tab. This time I'm going to go to the Alignment group and find this button called Merge and Center. Merge and Center does exactly what it says. It merges cell A1 and B1. So B1 is gone, A1 is now nice and big, and it centers the text in it. Now, unfortunately, you can't do that for more than one group of cells at a time, so more than one row at a time. So I have to come down here to January. If I want January to look centered over the spreadsheet, I'm going to highlight A2 and B2 again and do the same thing. Find my Merge and Center button and click on it. And now these two labels are centered, merged into these two cells, have been merged into one big cell for A1 and A2, and I've centered them as well. Something else I might want to do, I might want to take and put borders maybe on the top and the bottom of some very important cells. So I would say income and 3,250 are important. I want to bring attention to those. So I might bold them, of course, that might bring attention. But what I also might do is put a top and bottom border on these cells. And where I would find that is again on the Home tab. In the font group, right in the font group, you'll find a button which is really called the bottom border button. But if I click the down arrow on this button, it has many choices for the different borders that are available. And so I'm going to choose top and bottom border. Now I did it, but you can't see it, so I have to click off of that cell, and yes, there's the top and bottom border. Now I might want to take total and where eventually the total value will be. So in A12 and B12, I highlight, and I would use the top and bottom border button, and it remembers the choice that I made. Now, if you click the down arrow and choose top and bottom border again, not a big deal, but you could have just clicked the button because it remembers what you chose the last time. So we'll do that the next time here. We'll highlight A14 and B14, and we'll do top and bottom. And when we click off of it, we'll see that there are some borders on the top and bottom of each one of these most important lines. Again, like I said, you might want to come in and decide to bold and make a few things a little bit darker, so that always brings your eye to that row as well. And that's your main goal, is to show what this spreadsheet is all about and bring the eye there. So right now, I'm going to give you a chance to, for example, go to Excel, click on a new workbook, type in this rows of columns, rows and columns of data. So starting with my home budget, January 1st, 2020, you start and you just type everything into column A first. So I would always say that you type in the column that you're working on first. You type all of your labels, then all of your values in the next column. So you go to the next column and you type all of your text. Then maybe I decide to widen my columns. We also decided to merge and center some headings. You might want to try to do that. And then we put borders. We used top and bottom borders on some very important rows and cells that we thought were important. And then we decided to bold. So we might decide to bold some text that you might want to bring attention to. So hopefully that is enough for you to start practicing with. Part 2 will go through the formulas. Of course, always save and name your workbook. One of the things I want you to understand again is down the bottom there are several sheets. So you could have a sheet for the January budget, you could have a sheet for the February budget, and go all the way through the year if you like. I do want you to notice I'm going to come down here to sheet 1. Before we save our workbook, maybe I should name this sheet. And so all I have to do is double click on this text, sheet 1, and maybe I'll name it. Maybe I'll call it January and hit enter. So now I've named the sheet, and now I want to name the workbook. So File and Save. Decide where you want to put it. I'll put it into my Documents folder. Decide what you want to name it. So this is going to be the 2020 budget. It's an Excel workbook. I click Save. At the top of my screen, I'll see 2020 budget. And so now it's saved and I can work on it some more. So hopefully this is brings you enough information for you to practice. They say that you should practice 5 to 10 times on something to make it comfortable for you. So definitely practice, and I'll see you next time for part 2.